morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Sterling Tower, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. Margaret Chen had been cleaning these executive offices for 23 years, ever since her husband passed and left her to raise their daughter alone. At 58, her hands were weathered but steady, her eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses that had seen better days. She pushed her cleaning cart down the hallway, the wheels squeaking softly in the early morning silence. Most executives wouldn't arrive for another hour, which was exactly how Margaret preferred it. She could work in peace, invisible to the world of corporate power that swirled around her. But this morning was different. As Margaret entered the main conference room, she noticed someone was already there. A young man in an expensive gray suit sat at the head of the long table, papers spread before him. He couldn't have been more than 32, with dark hair swept back and an air of intensity that seemed to fill the room. This was James Rothwell, the company's newest vice president, known for closing deals worth hundreds of millions. Margaret began quietly wiping down the windows, trying not to disturb him. She had learned long ago that people like him rarely noticed people like her. James was reviewing a contract, his pen moving swiftly across the pages. The Meridian deal, they called it. $500 million, writing on his signature. It would be the crowning achievement of his young career, the validation he had worked toward since graduating top of his class at Harvard. Margaret worked her way around the room, her yellow cleaning gloves bright against the dark wood furniture. As she cleaned the table near where James sat, something caught her eye. A number on one of the documents. She paused, her cloth hovering over the glossy surface. Her daughter Emily was an accountant. Over countless dinners, Emily had taught her mother to recognize financial documents, understand the basics of contracts and numbers. It had been a way for them to connect, for Emily to share her world with a mother who had sacrificed so much. Margaret's heart began to pound. The number she was seeing didn't match the one on the page beneath it. She blinked, looking again. No, she wasn't mistaken. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly. James didn't look up. "Yes, what is it?" Margaret's throat felt dry. She had never spoken to an executive before. Not really. "Sir, I think this is wrong." "Tana," he looked up, irritation flickering across his face. "I'm sorry, what?" She pointed with a trembling finger, careful not to touch his precious documents. "This number here, 500 million. But this page says 500,000. I think someone made a mistake." James stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he looked down at the papers, really looked at them. His face went pale. The room seemed to grow very quiet. He grabbed the documents, flipping through them frantically. The color drained further from his face as he checked page after page. "My God," he whispered. "My God, you're right." Margaret took a step back, suddenly afraid she had overstepped. James stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. The other executives in the hallway, drawn by the commotion, began filing into the room. Among them was his boss, Richard Sterling, the silver-haired CEO who had built this company from nothing. "What's going on?" Sterling demanded. James held up the contract, his hand shaking slightly. "The Meridian deal. The decimal point is in the wrong place on the payment schedule. We would have been paying 500 million instead of 500,000 for the licensing fees every quarter for 10 years. Update." Executives crowded around, voices rising in disbelief and alarm. The total loss would have been catastrophic, potentially destroying the company. Sterling's face was grim as he examined the documents. "Who caught this?" James turned to look at Margaret, who stood frozen by her cleaning cart, clutching her yellow cloth. "She did." The cleaning lady, eyes turned to her. Margaret felt heat rise to her cheeks. She wanted to disappear, to push her cart out of the room and return to her comfortable invisibility. But Sterling walked toward her, his expression softening. "What's your name?" "Margaret Chen, sir," she managed to say. "Mrs. Chen." Do you understand what you just did? You saved this company from losing billions of dollars. That error would have bankrupted us within 3 years. Margaret shook her head slightly. I just noticed the numbers didn't match. My daughter is an accountant. She taught me to read these things. The room fell silent again. Here was a woman who spent her days cleaning up after them. Invisible in her uniform and yellow gloves, and she had seen what none of them had seen. She had saved them all. Sterling's voice was thick with emotion. How long have you worked here, Mrs. Chen? 23 years, sir. 23 years, he repeated, looking around at his executives. And I don't think I've ever known your name until today. That's shameful. He turned back to Margaret. I'm going to make sure everyone in this company knows what you did, and I'm going to make sure you're properly thanked. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. I was just doing what was right, sir. That's all, okay? In the days that followed, Margaret's life changed in ways she never imagined. The company gave her a substantial reward, enough to finally pay off her mortgage and help Emily with her student loans. But more than that, something shifted in the culture of Sterling Tower. People started noticing the cleaning staff, learning their names, saying good morning. James Rothwell made it a point to thank Margaret personally. He had learned a lesson in humility that no business school could have taught him on Margaret's last day before retirement. 3 years later, the entire company threw her a party. She stood in that same conference room, surrounded by executives and cleaning staff alike, and she thought about how one moment of courage can change everything. I'm just grateful I paid attention, she said in her short speech. Life taught me that everyone matters, and every detail matters. I'm glad I could help. As she walked out of Sterling Tower for the last time, the morning sun caught the windows just as it had that fateful day. Margaret smiled, knowing that kindness and attention can come from anywhere, and that being invisible doesn't mean you can't make a difference. Sometimes, the quietest voices carry the most important messages. We just have to be willing to listen. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring tales of everyday heroes. Leave a comment below and tell us about a time when someone unexpected made a difference in your life. Your story might inspire others.